How's it going, guys? Jake from Boatman UK here, and today I'm covering a video on our Vulcan once again, but covering specifically the button layout on the basic and sonar models. So if you're wondering what button does what and how to use the boat, whether you've purchased the boat already or not and you're just intrigued, then hopefully this video shall help. So first off, we'll take a look at the remote and we'll go through the button layout, and then after that we'll take a look at the sonar screen. Here we have our Vulcan Basic or Vulcan Sonar remote. They actually share the same remote, except for the sonar obviously has a bracket on the top for the sonar screen. So this is actually just a basic remote, but I will also be covering the sonar screen in a moment. So starting at the top of the remote, we have this little screen here. This screen is not changeable, it's a fixed screen, and it's just to represent some information for you. So this may seem self-explanatory, but I do like to try and cover these videos in as great a detail as I possibly can. So starting from the top, we have signal strength. Now, signal strength refers to literally the signal strength between the boat itself and the remote, the handset. And you have 5 little blue LED lights here, 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. So if you see this on 1, then it's time to not necessarily panic, but consider how far away the boat is from the remote. Now, you get 500 meters of range, so it's not very often where you're probably going to see this plummet massively, but it's just a nice little thing to keep an eye on, just so you can make sure that you're going to retrieve the boat safely. Second, down we have boat power, so that is the battery level in the boat itself. So these Vulcans have twin batteries. You have to have both batteries connected in order to be able to use the boat. You'll also have an LED indicator on the remote, on the boat itself, as well as on the remote. As you can see, this is currently charged to 100%. Below that, we have remote power, which again, battery level for the remote, as we can see, is currently at 80%. It does currently fluctuate between 80 and 100, which normally means it's pretty well at 80%, give or take. And then last, we have high speed, medium speed, and low speed, which is to control the speed of the boat. So if I press the speed button just here, you will see that it will change between each speed setting. So we're now in medium speed, we're now in low speed, and we're back to high speed. High speed is 60 meters per minute, medium speed is 45, and low speed is 30. We'll focus on the buttons now. So again, the nice thing with the Vulcan remote is it does seem self-explanatory, but again, trying to cover everything in as great detail as possible, and without sounding too obvious, you've got your hopper buttons along the top here. Now, obviously, your left hopper is going to open your left hopper individually. Your middle hopper will actually open both hoppers together at the same time. And you have a right hopper as well. So depending if you have a hopper divider, these don't come with a hopper divider, but you can get them aftermarket. Depending on what you're using and what you're doing, you can either open them together or individually. The only button that doesn't apply on this top row here is hook release. Naturally, of course, because this boat is top load rig, you don't have a hook release feature, so this button actually doesn't do anything at all. It does beep when you press it as an input, but it won't actually do anything with the boat at all. Obviously, we've already discussed our speed setting, but just to cover again, that changes the actual speed of the boat. So we usually use these in pretty much high speed most of the time. Where it's handy is if you are using a sonar, so if you have a sonar model or if you're towing a deeper, medium and low speed are actually really handy because you get a much better display and a much better readout. And of course, you don't necessarily want to be flat out when you're doing that. To the right of that, we have forward, which is our auto forward feature. So you can enter auto forward 2 ways. You can either enter auto forward by pressing the button forward just here, or you can press and hold it directionally straight for 5 seconds and it automatically engage auto forward as well. If you press forward and you want it to cancel, just simply press down on the actual control and that will stop it. Of course, this is our joystick to control the boat. Left is left, right is right, so on and so forth. That's pretty easy. Here we have our lamp, great/full, it says. So basically, if we single press it, we'll be able to turn the lights on and off on the boat. If you press and hold, it will turn all of the lights off, including the rear lights. Now, I can't imagine there's probably many reasons why you'd want to do that, but just you can if you want to. Next up, we have shore directional. Now, shore directional is a feature that I never really used, to be honest with you. But essentially, the best way I can describe it, and it is in the user manual, if you have the boat facing, let's say you want the boat facing, or you're heading out that way, you're heading towards that tree, let's say, to explain it simply. If you then press and hold shore directional facing that position, it will save that position. And what it will then do when you single press it is it will turn 180 degrees and head the opposite direction to where you save it. So for example, if you're fishing at a reasonable distance, you could save it. So let's say your rig is set up, or where you're fishing is, let's say, 100 meters over that way. You could obviously single press this once you've saved it and have it automatically return home. So whilst you set your rod down, set up your bobbins, you have it heading back in the right direction. Alternatively, what I usually do is just rotate the boat around manually and then just hit auto forward, but it's a nice little feature to have, and essentially that's the best way I can describe what that does. After this, we have left and right, and the left and right feature is only used when controlling yaw, which I will come to in a moment, so we'll skip these just briefly. In the middle, we have pairing, so you will never need to pair the remote from brand new. Pairing is only ever used if you have a new handset and you need to pair it to the remote. So you should never actually really need to use this button in particular. If for whatever reason the handset does lose pairing or you think it isn't pairing, you would normally make sure the boat is switched off, turn the remote on, press and hold pairing. You will hear the remote start to beep in sequence, at which point you turn the remote on and it should pair for you. But for the most part, you can ignore this. Here we have background light, which it's too bright to probably see outside, but that obviously powers up the background lights for the buttons. Now we have yaw, which I'll come back onto now. So if your boat is tracking out slightly, so let's say, for example, you're sending your boat out and you're finding it's veering right a little bit, which sometimes they do, you can actually adjust it on the yaw control. So what you would normally do, you would press and hold the yaw button, and then you would input left or right. So if it's tracking to the right, you want to input more yaw to the left. So we'd press and hold that, and we'd single press, like so, individual presses at a time. You'll hear a beep to represent each individual input. Now, there is a lot of input. I recommend if you do end up needing to adjust the yaw control, do it by 10 increments at a time. Keep count of how many you've done, just in case you get lost and you need to go back, because you can quite easily get lost. But that is how to adjust your yaw control. Then lastly, we have compass, and compass is absolutely essential if you're using the shore directional feature or auto forward. So what you usually do is you send your boat out in the water, get about 10 meters or so away from the actual boat and the handset itself, and then you press and hold compass. The boat will spin around in circles, and essentially what it's doing is it's learning the directions, it's learning north, south, east and west, and that just ensures that when you're sailing in auto forward or shore directional, that it heads dead straight and tracks completely true. Even in crosswinds, it just helps assist with a straight sail. And then lastly, of course, we have our power button, which is self-explanatory. Press and hold to power off, press and hold to power on. And that covers the remote. So here is our display. And again, we'll start from the top left. We have our foot or our depth reading just here. As you can see, where I am in this little pond here, it fluctuates a hell of a lot. We have the boat in the water, but you will see some bizarre readings, which I'll explain and go through in a moment. So that is our depth reading. Here is our water temperature. This is our battery life of the sonar screen. Here we have our signal strength, the channel we're currently connected to, which you don't really need to worry about, or you shouldn't really ever need to access, but I'll explain how to do so if you should need to in a moment. And then that's pretty much everything. You then have the important part, which is your display. So here on the Vulcan, we have one single frequency, so you can't switch frequencies, so you don't have to worry about any of this here. All you need to worry about is what you're seeing on the screen. So here on the screen, you will see a multitude of different colors. And on the blue background, which is the one that I always like to use, red is like a soft, so that would be like a silt. It would be leaves or even weed. Where we are currently, there's a hell of a lot of like sort of sediment and also leaves. So for example, if I sail this under a tree, which I'm just doing now in the background, you might well see that it will pick up even more. You can kind of see, yeah, you can see because there's obviously going to be leaves on the in the water there. So we've got a lot of soft ground or soft surface, and then you have a green, which is sort of like a medium. So that would be, a green would represent like a clay or a hard mud, and then there's not really much of it here. But normally, sometimes you see there's a little bit of yellow here and there. Sometimes you have a yellow bottom, which would be gravel. Or anything like that, like stone, for example. So essentially, this is telling you what type of bottom that you have. Now, of course, the sonar for the Boatman range is a feature finder. It does have a fish finding feature, but its priority is to be a feature finder. And unfortunately, I'm not fishing. Well, I'm not fishing at all. I'm just testing the boat in our little test lake or test pond, and it doesn't really represent the best of features because it's pretty featureless. You can see there's a couple of little things there. Anyway, here we have our echo transducer, so you can see what's going on and what it's doing. And we have our little directional arrows here, which allow you to navigate through the menu. Here we have a zoom feature, which is actually new to these new models, which is actually quite nice. It'll allow you to really zoom in and focus on one particular area. So, you know, you've got a zoomed in feature there, and it will show you what you're hovering over right now. So if there's something that you see that you want to take a closer look at, if there's a really, really small drop off or anything like that, you can use the zoom feature, and you can either use the button to escape, or you just press it again and you'll come out of it again. Escape is for escaping out of the menu. This is your power button, so you press and hold to turn on or off, and this is our actual settings menu. So here is some recommended settings. This isn't going to apply to everybody, and the user manual does have some really good recommendations in it as well, which I do recommend to follow, because water depth and clarity will also make a difference. So the water here is quite dirty. It is a pond. There's a lot of all sorts of stuff in here, and it does affect the sonar quite massively. So I have to have my sensitivity quite low. So sensitivity, so for example, what I will do is I will just turn my sensitivity right up, and you will see if I turn it right up, you'll see it goes kind of crazy. That's basically because it's overly sensitive now, and it's picking up all sorts of stuff on the surface, etc, etc. So I recommend, if you're fishing somewhere quite shallow like this is no more than 6 foot, and the water is really quite dirty, around a 50% sensitivity, give or take. The lower the sensitivity, technically the less accurate it's going to be at picking up, but it's a case of you have to fine tune it and find that balance depending on where you are. Next one down, we have chirp. The best way I can describe chirp, because that's also a new feature, is it is the definition of what you're seeing here. So it's really, really fine. It doesn't make a massive difference, but if I turn the chirp up, you might just see the colours just change ever so slightly. Now this is really, really fine, and in my opinion doesn't need worrying about too much in the settings. I personally always tend to set it around 60%, because I think that's what they say in the manual. This setting really isn't massively important, unlike sensitivity, which is pretty critical. Next up, we have our depth range, which you can change, which will change the aspect ratio of what you're reading. Always set this to auto. You can change from 0 to 120 feet, and as you can see, the reading is kind of crazy. You have 0 to 90, 0 to 60, 0 to 30, 0 to 15, 0 to 9, and that is the lowest you can go. I always just set it to auto. It automatically figures itself out, and if you also go into a drop off with some deep water, it's going to automatically adjust for you, so just keep that in auto. Next down, we have fish symbols / depth on. So fish symbols on basically means that your fish finding feature is on, so it will display fish. And then the second on is for the depth, which means it will tell you what depth. So if it sees a fish and it picks it up on the fish finder, next to that it will have a little depth reading, so it tells you where that was at. And I will give some advice on this in just a moment. Next up, we have simulator, which you can ignore. Simulator is purely for display purposes, and it's like when you go to Halfords and you see the radios on the side doing all sorts of crazy things. That's exactly what simulator's for. So if you turn your sonar screen on and it's going Larry and it's not even in the water, check and make sure you've got simulator set to off. Next up, we have backlight, which again, self-explanatory, that adjusts the brightness of the background of the screen. Next up, we have volume, which adjusts the little bleep that hopefully you can hear in the background here. So that will adjust how loud that beep is. Then after that, we've got units. Our units again is the depth and temperature, so you can change that between meters and feet, and Celsius and Fahrenheit. I personally prefer feet and of course Celsius, seeing as we are in the UK, but this can be changed if needs be. Next up, we have fish alarm, which I believe, if I remember correctly, I've never adjusted this setting, but I think every time that you see a fish or detect a fish on the fish finder, it has a little alarm, it makes a little noise, I believe. Don't hold me to that. Again, it's a feature I've never used, and it's probably in the menu that'll explain it a bit better, but really not important. We have battery alarm, which is our low voltage alarm. 3.4 volts is when it will start telling you that it's low on battery. I recommend you keep that where it is. We have backgrounds. So here I always run on blue, that's just my personal favourite, but you also have a white background that you can use, and you also have grayscale. Now this is very much personal preference. The white background is, I would actually say, it's probably more popular than the blue, but I've always liked the blue. Grayscale is good for deeper waters in my opinion, but I'm going to stick with blue because that's my personal preference. Then we have surface clarity, which again is all to do with what it says on the tin, surface clarity. It's all to do with the surface reading. I tend to find it doesn't make a massive difference, especially with the shallower water we have here. Again, something you can experiment around with, but essentially you have off, you have low, you have medium, and you have high. I just have mine set to off currently because that seems to work for me. We have noise rejection, which is, again, is all to do with the sensitivity setting. I always just recommend to leave that on high. Language in English, of course, you can cycle through the languages. And then a reset settings as well. So if you somehow muddle everything up and you don't know how to get back, you reset settings and it will default everything back to where it was originally. And that's it for our menu. And again, to get out the menu, we can hit escape. You'll see now, conveniently, I'm now running low on battery, and that is the low battery voltage meter that I was telling you about a moment, and you can probably hear that in the background telling me it's low on battery. Before it does run out of battery, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to display a couple of key things that I always need to advise on sonar. If you go into incredibly shallow water, so in the background here, you'll see the boat coming in, and it is incredibly shallow at the bank here, and you will see the sonar in a moment will start going crazy. You'll get obviously a hell of a lot of reading, but in a moment, you'll probably see it should start reading some pretty leery depths and also reading fish that don't exist. And I just wanted to say that this is completely normal. It's because you have to have a minimum depth of around 4 foot for it to actually read accurately. When it's too close, it sends it into a frenzy. This is very common and normal on all sonars. Make sure if you're doing this, if it's doing this, make sure that your depth is actually decent enough. Anything too shallow will do this, and it may even ping up random fish that do not exist. This currently doesn't seem to be doing so, but just a little bit of advice, really. So that's pretty much all I wanted to cover on this particular model of boat. The basic and the sonar remote itself, really nice and easy. You can't really go too far wrong. There's no hidden menus or anything like that like there is on the GPS model. These remotes are really nice and easy to read, as you've just seen. Every button is labelled up as to what it does, so you can't go too far wrong. Now, if you are struggling with anything and this video didn't help you, let us know below in the comments if there's anything I've missed or if there's any information that you specifically want on these particular models. Again, as I said earlier on in the video, if you have a GPS or Pro model, I do have a separate video coming out for that. And I will also be releasing some videos pretty soon covering the Act Plus model and also an actual showing off an instruction guide on the boat itself rather than just the remote. So again, hope this video helps and take care.